Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I am just another tinfoil hat. Welcome to my show. Today, we're going to be discussing the galvanizing Galveston creature. Look, I know it's not the catchiest name I've ever come up with, but it fit too well not to use. In October of 1973, a man referred to under several pseudonyms corresponding to the initials JM was fishing around twilight near Galveston, Indiana, at an area locally and so fondly referred to as the pits. According to Don Worley's investigation, JM, we'll just stick with Jim for the sake of ease here, was fairly skeptical of the unknown prior to the experience I'm about to detail. Now, initially, Jim had been joined by two companions, though by this point in the evening, they had decided to move to a different section of the lake. So suddenly, as Jim was fishing by himself, he felt a hand on his shoulder. Startled, he turned around and saw a sandy-colored Bigfoot-like creature. Now, initially, Jim really only had the chance to really take note of the hands, face, and legs before it turned and ran down the road across a bridge and jumped over a ditch before finally vanishing into the woods. Now, interestingly enough, Jim stated that he could actually hear its feet slapping on the pavement of the road, and he also had the incredibly odd description of its movement as though it was being pulled too fast on a rope. So barring the odd description of its very bizarre method of walking, and also the really intriguing and strange detail of it really beginning the encounter by laying its hand on someone's shoulder, effectively we have a pretty standard if super close encounter with a Sasquatch-like creature, right? Well, no sooner did it vanish into the trees, did a bronze glow ascend from the area into which it disappeared, shoot into the sky, and vanish. So, a couple of days later, Jim returned, weapon in hand, to the area with a posse of 4 other people, including one John Gray, who at the time was his future father-in-law. Not only was the initial witness apprehensive about his return to the area, but he may have actually had good reason to be. Part of their trip out to the spot, they were actually followed by an aerial light, which, surprise, surprise, vanished as soon as they neared the bridge. Now, the old adage is that lightning does not strike twice. However, apparently Bigfoot does, because just as they approached said bridge and the light vanished, the creature itself was spotted standing in the exact area where it had previously vanished during Jim's initial encounter. Now, this time, everyone was able to get a good look at the thing, and they ascertained that it stood around 8 to 9 feet tall. So apparently, they were all sufficiently brave enough that they exited the vehicle to get a better look. However, the bravery did not last long for 2 of those who accompanied Jim out there, as 2 of them returned to the car immediately. They just didn't want any part of whatever was going on here. Now, the remaining members of the party did the only reasonable thing. They kept the creature in the crosshairs of 2 flashlight beams, while they yelled questions and swear words at it. Eventually, even, in an ironic reversal of Bigfoot-human interaction, they even began hurling rocks at the beast, which appeared unaffected. Whether this was due to something paranormal or simply bad aim is up for debate. Now, one of the party members even stated that it appeared as though the beams of the flashlight actually weakened as they attempted to illuminate the creature. Now, eventually, this incredibly dramatic series of events ended when an approaching vehicle forced the posse to move their car, and the creature simply vanished. Now, interestingly enough, if this whole encounter is not already interesting enough, according to the Kokomo Herald, John Gray, Jim's future father-in-law and witness on the second go-around, had already had about a dozen UFO encounters spanning 1965 to the date of the publication in 1975, including a really dramatic early experience where he claimed that some psychic force urged him to go outside and shine his flashlight towards the heavens. As if on cue, an orange glow appeared in the sky and responded to his 3 rhythmic flashlight flashes with 3 of its own. So what exactly do we make of this incredibly bizarre series of events? I know one of the first things that stood out to me was the very initial moment of his experience where the creature literally placed its hand on Jim's shoulder. Now, first and foremost, it's a little interesting that he didn't hear, smell, or otherwise sense, for all intents and purposes, this 8 to 9 foot tall ape-like being coming at him. Furthermore, it reminds me a little bit of many cases of hauntings, where people say that somebody tapped them on their shoulder or grabbed their clothes, and when they turned around, no one was there. Or that, they thought that it was their buddy Ryan, and instead turned around to see what they wanted, and here it's, some cigar-smoking gent in a top hat who vanished upon sight. Only in this case, instead of coming face-to-face with nobody or with a murdered bride, what Jim came face-to-face with was a towering Sasquatch-like creature. Now, interesting here, too, is the fact that, like many other cases, including but not limited to the Cisco Grove encounter or the infamous Marlinton encounter, this event seems to happen as soon as the gang splits up. I swear, it's like a Scooby-Doo episode. When you look at so many cases of cryptid UFO or ghost contact, it seems to be a pattern that the activity often spikes when just one person is left alone. Of course, this is not all the time or even most of the time. It's just an interesting thread that's kind of stood out to me going through many of these cases, is that it seems as though, especially if you have like a trio, as soon as the two people move off and one person is separated, that's when something happens. Now, too, this case also includes one of my absolute all-time favorite aspects of paranormal phenomena, and that is attendant light anomalies. When the creature was first spotted and vanished, it was immediately succeeded by a bronze glow which shot into the sky and disappeared. Now, when the posse returned to the area, they were followed by a glow in the sky which, surprise, surprise, vanished almost immediately prior to spotting the creature. A lot of researchers have theorized that it seems as though these manifestations tend to have dual forms. One is simply a light or light anomaly, a kind of more vague, diffuse manifestation, whereas the other is some hard and fast being or craft, such as a creature or a flying saucer. In this case, too, it's not to mention the multiple reports of light anomalies by a tangential witness, John Gray. But back to the light on the return sighting, the really intriguing thing here is that it vanished as they approached the bridge. This is interesting for a variety of reasons. The first being it reminds me of another encounter, the bizarre flight suit entity, in which all light anomalies stopped at the crossing of a certain intersection. The second main reason has to do specifically with the crossing of bridges and waterways by paranormal phenomena. Of course, I've talked about this in the past. In this case, the creature was able to cross just fine, while the light anomaly did not appear able to transcend that boundary. We also have to ask what the importance of Gray's sighting are to this particular sighting. At this time, of course, the initial witness, Jim, was engaged to Gray's daughter. Now, Gray had had a history of sightings. Some people theorize that the paranormal can indeed be catching. Again, who really knows, but it's kind of an interesting concept that, especially at this point in Jim's life, as he was approaching marriage into a family with a repeater witness, that's when he has not one, but two Bigfoot encounters, and not just Bigfoot encounters, but high strangeness Bigfoot encounters. So it's kind of intriguing, especially given the fact that he apparently had no interest in the paranormal prior to his experience. This case also includes a concept that I'm very interested in, and that is, again, this kind of reversal of the roles of the observer and the observed with the throwing of rocks. Of course, the tossing of rocks, stones, and other projectiles has been heavily associated with Bigfoot, but also with poltergeist phenomena. And it's interesting because I have run across several cases where the witnesses actually take up this exact same action against the phenomena, which would be more conventionally associated with it. A really great example of that is the walking tree stump case, which was effectively kind of begun by the main witness throwing rocks at these strange light anomalies. And what followed, of course, was a really intense period of time where she and her family experienced poltergeist phenomena. So in this case, however, the rocks appear to have absolutely no effect on the creature. And, interestingly enough, a lot of times when people do fire at a Bigfoot or try and harm it in some way, there does seem to be just simply no effect. Now, in this case, the question is it something paranormal, or is it just simply the aim of some frightened witnesses? Who can tell? But on the flip side, too, if we're theorizing that potentially this is due to something paranormal, that the bullets or rocks or whatever are just going right through this manifestation, in this particular case, the creature also did seem physical, hence the noise of the feet slapping on the ground. And while on the topic of it running away, we have that really strange detail of how it looked like it was being pulled by a rope. Now, so often, when you have these bizarre entities, again, they're already strange enough, it's already a Bigfoot, no one really expects to see that. But then you have these small details that just throw them right into kind of the area of the super duper strange. And especially the movements of many of these cryptids. They're described as looking as though they're slightly off or they're not moving correctly. And I think that's really interesting that, again, a detail like that, detailing how the movement seemed, unnatural in a way, is brought up in this case as well. So finally, possibly the most bizarre aspect to me about this case is that when the party showed up 2 nights after the initial encounter, the creature appeared at the exact same spot where it had previously disappeared. This is one of those cases of, great timing on the part of the beastie. You have to ask, why then and why there? It seems to me, at least, that this is evidence that the appearance of the creature is inexorably tied to the experience of the witness. That like the trees falling in the forest, we have to ask the question, if we were not there to see the Squatch, would it still even be there? Well, if you enjoyed this episode on the galvanizing Galveston creature, please like, and if you're new to this field of crop circles, go ahead and subscribe to see what weirdness the future may have in store. Till then, you can keep up with whatever else I might possibly have going on my website, justanothertinfoilhat.com, and for exclusive content, make sure to check out my Patreon page, which is also listed under, pull out your notepad for this one, Just Another Tinfoil Hat. For today, I am Zelia Edgar, signing off.
doing?